All right. Hey, everybody. This is Jon Reynolds. He's a good buddy of mine from back in our college days at TIU. And John's now working down in Chicago with the ministry down there. So before I'll let you explain it a little bit, John. Why don't you explain a little bit about what you're doing right now and a little bit about your background in ministry and how you came to be doing what you're doing now.
Absolutely. Thank you again, John. I appreciate you reaching out to me to talk to me about this, and I'm more than welcome to help you with anything that you or the church needs, and I'm praying for your church plant. But again, my name is Jonathan Reynolds. Grew up, my parents are pastors on the south side of Chicago, and so I was, sort of born into a Christian home and felt a call of ministry when I was a teenager, and so ended up going to Trinity, studied biblical studies, and being involved with ministry there. And then after that, went on to seminary to the MDiv program for about 2 years, and after 2 years being there, I left that program, and now I'm in the urban ministry program. Because I wanted to focus, knowing that I would be in an urban context, I wanted to focus more on urban issues and to find a way to answer some of those questions that I might be dealing with theologically there. But as far as ministry goes, did church planting for a year downtown, still doing services, but now we're connected with a larger church, Oakdale Covenant Church on the south side, a historic black church, and we're trying to do some plants downtown. Before that, I worked with Assemblies of God, Church of God denomination with 52 churches doing young adult ministry and urban missions downtown. And of course, with Trinity, doing different ministries and multicultural office and missions office to Africa and things like that. So I love ministry, been involved in ministry my whole life, and love talking about social issues when it comes to ministry too, being that's just the climate that my family brought me up in. My dad's a sociology professor alongside being a theology professor, so this is something that we talk about all the time and I love talking about.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks again for doing this, John. Again, we really appreciate it, man. And I know this is something that's close to your heart, and with our current series right now called Seeking Justice, today we're talking a little bit about social tensions and some racial tensions that have kind of sprung up over the last few years. And what I'm thinking about here is like the Trayvon Martin case, the Ferguson, Missouri, and Michael Brown, the Freddie Gray in Baltimore, and Laquan McDonald in Chicago even, which is really close to your home, and Black Lives Matter, all of this stuff. In your assessment, to what degree have these tensions kind of been existing under the radar, under the national radar over the last few years and prior to that?
Yeah, I think those things hitting the media because the media wave jumped on it being popular, and with the social media age of people recording it on their phone and things like that, only brought out what has just been happening in the community and brought it to the public. In the same way that television did with Martin Luther King marching and people getting sprayed with water and attacked by dogs in the South. All of a sudden, America got to see with their blind eye through technology what is actually happening in the community already. And that brought forth a social movement. People really coming together to answer that. So, for me, even being in high school, on the south side of Chicago, and knowing of friends who had dealt with police abuse, who had actually won cases in court. These were high school friends that I went to school with, actually being grabbed by officers. Myself, my dad actually worked with the police department and told me to, next time that happens to you, make sure you report their badge and things like that. So I've encountered those type of things myself. It's just something that is normally dealt with when you are a minority in those type of urban communities where policing might need some reform. And so it is something that happens, and sorry to see it on television, sorry to see it being recorded. Sorry to see it be put out in that type of way, but it is what's really happening on the ground in many of our communities, and a concern. It's not something, I wouldn't say it's something that, of course, you walking down the street, on 95th or 75th, right, that you're just going to see. But it does happen. It does happen, and it does need to be something that needs to be addressed politically, by the community, by our churches, and by everyone.
Awesome. Yeah, you have a perspective on this that I don't have, and many in our church don't have. So again, I really appreciate you offering your insights and your perspective and your experience on this stuff. And one who does ministry in Chicago, I know, as I said, the Laquan McDonald incident had to really hit home, and it was really close to home with you guys. So in that case, what was the reaction by your church, and how did you minister through it?
Yeah, it's kind of really, it's a very cool thing, and I'm sorry to say this on such a solemn move, but being a part of a large historic black church on the South Side, many times when things are happening in the community, we as black organized and black leaders are the first ones to know of it coming, even before sometimes it surfaces in the media. So, for lack of a better word, cool. But it was brought to our attention, and me and my pastor were actually invited down to the police station to watch the video a week before it was even supposed to come out. They knew that this was going to be something that was going to disrupt the community, and so they wanted the leaders of the community to know what was going to happen before, and to try to get some type of agreement about how to work towards solving the problem. And so we actually knew. I get a call on the phone by my pastor. Hey, this kid, shot and killed over a year ago, and they got the videos going to surface. They're calling us down to come watch it. And so, it's sad to say. I don't know if I remember the question fully.
No, that's fine. What was the reaction of your church community at large, and how did you guys minister through it?
Yeah, just very devastated to see it happen. We have a lot of police officers. Some serve as superintendents. Some serve. We got we just got a lot of big time leaders, officers and regular officers in our church. And so even from the officers to the regular people, we're just very sad to see it. Very concerned about the health of the community and how they're reacting. And so it really was just a tough thing. They reacted very sadly. I ended up going down, marching with Black Lives Matter, and many of my pastor friends to try to bring awareness about what's happening so that we could get reform. Because as you know, they didn't act on it as quickly as they should have. And so that was just our concern, is we didn't want issues like that to happen in our community, and we not respond and challenge the people in authority to make sure that they are addressing the issues of police reform, police brutality, and things like that. So, it was a sad thing. It was a sad thing. We reacted very sadly, prayed about it, talked about it, as and small talk. Going into church, leaving out of church, and getting calls on the phone, and being involved.
And I know what you would say to this question. In some respects, I know you would say that the gospel is powerful, and the gospel changes lives, and the gospel has just a great ability to minister in these situations. So, how have you seen the gospel kind of transform these situations, and how have you seen the gospel really take root in people's lives through this?
Yeah, what was incredible to watch was I think sometimes, of course, the videos come on the news of these mass groups of people maybe disrupting or maybe doing it peacefully, but you rarely get to see the individual stories that are actually happening. So me being down or being on the ground, being involved in the process, I got to see, ministers leading the pack, ministers praying outside while these protests are going on. Many of the things they won't show on TV. Ministers in the community trying to calm people down, talking with people about the issues. When they're marching Michigan Avenue to, State Street, shutting down 290, shutting down Express, shutting down Lakeshore Drive. You know, I was out there, I saw ministers in the community stepping up as leaders and using this as a gospel moment to witness. Even on social media, I have a lot of friends who are young pastors on the South Side, from Lutheran churches to your charismatic churches, who were putting posts up about it, having discussions at their churches about it, on Tuesdays and Wednesday night, Bible studies and meet small groups. Those type of stories don't get out. You don't hear about that, but that is what the gospel is doing, is finding a way to go to where the havoc is and to bring peace. And so that was just my even initial effort in seeing the marches and things going on. What way can I go down there and in the midst of that, conduct myself in a righteous way and show them how to righteously protest and ask for peace and not just to mourn in anger, and so, preaching for my sermons changed, obviously, those weeks, talking about how the gospel, I get to talk with her, some youth, young adults, I get to tell them about how the gospel can help bring peace to those broken situations. And so that's sort of the big eagle-eye view. You also got to see some pastors in the community, some white pastors I saw were down there. Pastor River City Church, him down there on News and CNN. I don't know if you got to see it, just talking about bringing reconciliation to our communities racially, and Hispanic pastors, and just coming together. And that story always gets missed, I think, in the media, and it should be brought to light of how we really are the people, the pastors, the ministers, especially in the black community, who step up to try to bring that peace and that answer, the gospel of Jesus Christ, to a broken situation. Not always successfully, but we try.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that leads me into my next question too. What are some steps that we can take on a community level, on an individual level, for the gospel to have an even greater impact, so that these situations don't happen again, or that we can minister before these situations happen again?
Absolutely. I think number one is prayer. Of course, I believe that prayer changes things, that prayer is real, that God sees his people crying out and hears the cries of his people, and he answers them. And so, of course, prayer. The second thing is to inform your actions or your dialogue or even your thinking or views on things. The best way to do it is to try to learn as much as possible. Reading articles that might differ in opinions online to become more empathetic towards both sides of the argument. If you have the chance going, downtown or going to these communities, and just asking people and talking with them about it, calling up friends and talking with them about it, who are in the midst of that, like what we're doing now. In some type of way, trying to go through an experience by which you can build up your emotional intelligence and empathy about what might be going on in the situation, from the police officer side to a child side, to the black community side, to a Hispanic white community side. Just trying to understand the stories of what's happening. Really then shape and inform how you speak about it, how you view it, and how you act on it. And so those are things that we all can do. I believe that America is just a place where we're very polarized. We're very argumentative. We don't want to come together and love one another genuinely with the love of Christ. And so since we have those issues, we stay disconnected, and we choose to disagree before we choose to love and walk together. And I don't have to agree with every single view that you have in order for me to love you with the love of Christ, and in order for us to walk together as brother and sister. Brother and brother, sister and sister. We don't have to agree on everything for God's work to be done. And so that's what's always disheartening to see is how the church doesn't just come together to show a unified front on a lot of the issues that happen in our city, in our state, and in our country.
Well said, man. That's really good stuff. That's all I got for you. And I appreciate you again taking the time to talk with us and to talk with our church and to give us your perspective on what's going on and how the gospel can bring peace to these tensions that we see in society and these tense race relations that as you've been outlining, as you've been describing, shouldn't exist within the church. It shouldn't be in the gospel-centered community. So, again, any closing words or any final thoughts?
Yeah, just thank you for your integrity. I've known you for a long time, and you are someone who chooses to be a peacemaker and to bring people together and to love people. And you are an excellent pastor in doing that. Even before you were a pastor, you were just that loving guy. So I thank you for reaching out to me to talk about this. Love talking about it. And just to say that, of course, even if these things do exist within our Christian body, that love is the answer towards working things out and walking together. Again, we don't have to be disconnected. We can still love each other even if we disagree. We can love each other and work together and do God's work and help people. And so that's always the disheartening thing to see, is whether it's from Hispanic, Black, whatever the sector is, socioeconomically, urban to rural, the church should be there to just love and to exemplify Christ's love. Christ, I believe, would have been in the rural countryside loving people just as much as walking down the street loving people with protesters of Black Lives Matter, just as much as in a rich, community or in Afghanistan. He would have been loving people and showing that love and not caring about what other people thought, what the custom was. He would have just been out there loving people and showing that in a radical way. And so, thank you.
That's awesome, man. Thank you. Again, we'll be praying for your ministry and praying that God does some great things down there with your ministry in Chicago, and people come to know Jesus and people grow in their faith. That's amazing, man. I really appreciate you and all the work that you're doing. So God bless you, brother.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks, John.